Hey, welcome to episode 139 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. This podcast episode is titled Savoring the Moments. Why? We got to slow down and pause and savor and enjoy the moments we have right here, right now, whatever they are, whether it's work or play or whatever. Being fully present is so very important. All right. I listened to 4 episodes of different podcasts this past week. It's been a really full week for me, but I think you'll find some value in taking a look at the playlist that I provide so you can go listen to those episodes yourself, as well as my thoughts here in the podcast. So without further ado, here's episode 139, Fresh Air at 5.
I'm Chris Nessie, host of Behind the Mic, Voices of the EPN, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood, to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at Fresh Air at 5 or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey PLN, it is Tuesday, September 26, 2023, out for Fresh Air at 5. I skipped yesterday because it was pouring rain. And I was really tired because I got back from a weekend of fly fishing. Fantastic weekend, and I was tired, so I didn't go for my walk. But this morning, I got out the door. It's not raining. It's actually clear sky with a skim of high cloud. Can see stars through it, and it's a beautiful, beautiful day. I took on listening to episode 2 of Embrace the Messy podcast with Shannon Schenkel out of Vancouver and area. And thank you, Shannon, for sharing your podcast with us again. It's the second episode, and I'm so excited to hear you talk about the work you're doing with educators and in your school and your book club. And this week you talked with Natalie Vadabasso out of Calgary. And Natalie and I crossed paths through the Tom Schimmer podcast, and she was working with Tom one summer. This was 2 summers ago on assessment with Tom and Nat, the section at the end of the podcast, and I learned about her, and I've listened to the EduCrush podcast and heard Natalie's story a little bit, just a bit, smidge. And this morning as I'm walking, I learned a lot more about Natalie and where her journey has started and where it is going, and more about yours also, Shannon, as you talk about your father being a principal and an educator for many years, and how you didn't think you saw eye to eye with him, but as you move along in life, you see that there's a lot more connection there than maybe you thought. Natalie, thank you so much for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing about your journey, and thank you for actually, being part of the inspiration for me to start thinking differently about assessment. I'm an old dude and was taught a certain way, and I have my defaults, and I have to be mindful about those defaults as we go forward. All right, take a listen. Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a good day. Okay, bye. The last thing for September 26, 2023. I usually get to the end of the first section and I've got other things on my mind that I'd like to talk about, but I never did say. So as I'm wrapping up my walk this morning, I listened to the powerful episode 2 of Embrace the Messy podcast with Shannon Schenkel, as she has on guest Natalie Vadabasso out of Calgary. I said that again wrong, Natalie. I'm sorry, your last name. But she is a mover and a shaker, who both of them are. But Natalie is a change agent for assessment, doing things the right way and caring about students and listening to their stories as opposed to putting marks down in a grade book and how we have traditionally provided assessment feedback to students. And Natalie, as you talk about story and the book that you're writing with Tom Schimmer, super excited about that. I haven't read any of Tom's books yet. True story, Tom, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry about that. But I will get a book, and I will listen to a book by Tom Schimmer. And I'm looking forward to the one in the spring that you and Tom are writing about humanizing assessment through story, and how we all have a story. And we want to share our story. And what does that story have to do with making progress in life? So, yes, that came to mind as I pressed end on the last segment, and I wanted to say that. So thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Shannon. And Shannon, can you reach out to me on Twitter, and DM me, because I have an opportunity that I'd like to share with you. Okay, thanks so much. Okay, bye. Hey PLN, it's September 28, 2023, out for my walk today, and today's a wet day, and I'm like, I gotta go, because I've skipped a couple of days this week because of shoulder pain and also volume of work at work, and that's not good because I get through my day and it's lacking. So, so I notice that it's not there when I don't go for my walk and take care of myself. But I'm out walking now, and it's not raining too bad, which is good, and I'm grateful for that. And even if it was, I'd still be walking because I'm grateful for this opportunity I have to breathe the fresh air. All right, this morning, I listened to an episode of the Optimalist podcast with Sarah Candela, and Sarah tells a great story with her guests as they talk about the various aspects of being at our optimal self in a world of distraction, and how to stay focused. And the episode I listened to today came out, I believe, this Wednesday with Lainey Rowell. And Lainey is one of my favorite podcasters right now. She has the Evolving with Gratitude podcast, the book, and the Gratitude Journal that, she has come out. And gratitude is such an important part of what's going on. As Sarah and Lainey talk on the Optimalist podcast, they talk about savoring the present and a future of flourishing. And those two words are rich and deep words. Savoring that bite of food in your mouth, paying attention to a conversation, enjoying the weather as you're out and about and the sunshine beating on your face. And how does that affect us flourishing? Not just surviving, not just thriving, but blooming and blossoming into being more beautiful people in our world of, so much darkness and hurt and sorrow. And not saying that we have to be toxically positive, but that we have to be intentional in these things. Take a listen to the Optimalist podcast. So good. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, Lainey. Have a great day. One more thing for September 28, 2023. I'm just walking down the street and saw a sad situation. There was a deer that has been struck probably by a vehicle that is laying in the middle of the road and has passed away. And I saw that, and it's like, oh man, these creatures of our forest that live right around our neighborhood, because I'm on the edge of the forest, and our residential has taken over some of their space, and they had passed through here. I saw deer this past week as I was walking early in the morning, and it's so beautiful to see. And we have one that has died and is on the street. So I called the police non-emergency line and reported it, and hoping that somebody can come and clean it up, because it's a sad thing, and just to make sure that it doesn't affect anybody in their driving, because it's laying in the middle of the road. Okay, I had to share that. Oh man, you see things and it's just like, wow. But that's what makes us human, if we pay attention to what's around us and take care of things, and just, making a difference for other people. All right, I listened to the most recent episode of Teach Happier with Suzanne Daly. And Suzanne, good morning to you. I hope you're doing well. Took my breath away when I was listening to your podcast and I saw the deer. But you talk on this podcast episode, and I didn't catch the number of the episode, but you talk about fail happier and how not the first attempt in learning, and then we, are happier because we tried that. But no. This is about, failure as a thing that has happened that has been significant and grave, and what can we, learn about that, and what changes have come as a result of that failure, and you talked about a professor at Harvard that suggested a failure journal from an episode of the Tim Ferriss show that your friend Brian passed along to you, and so good, and a failure journal. Take a listen to what Suzanne has to say. Try it out yourself. I think I might try. Thanks, Suzanne. Have a good day. Bye. Hey, PLN Friday, September 29, 2023. It is Friday, and it's been a week, man. Wow, what a week. Good stuff going on all week, but so much stuff going on this week. And I am on this side of it now because we had our last day of school yesterday, and today's Pro D, and I am going to be packing up at the end of the day and going fishing for the weekend. Last upcountry in British Columbia fishing trip for me, and then it's back just fishing daily, the local rivers for salmon until I don't know, maybe into November or so, and then we'll be done for this year. Steelhead starts, but I don't chase steelhead right now at this point, and then we'll be waiting for the lakes to thaw and all that stuff. All right, so as I'm walking right now, I listened to the third episode of Behind the Mic with Chris Nessie, the Voices of the Educational Podcast Network. And on this week's episode, every 2 weeks actually, so episode 3, he talks with Fonz Mendoza, one of the members of the Educational Podcast Network, about him and his show and his journey with My EdTech Life. If you haven't listened to My EdTech Life, I really encourage you to go listen to his show, listen to Behind the Mic episode 3 to get some backstory, because I think, it's like the backstory of maybe a song or a story. It makes a big difference in listening to what's going forward with that, Like when I learned why a band wrote a song, like a musical artist wrote a song, it changes how that song sounds. And that's what Behind the Mic is going to do, hopefully, for you listening to our podcasts in the network, because, you hear the backstory, you hear why we started, why we do what we do, and why does Carpenter walk out here? I don't talk about that all the time, but you'll hear that. And actually, it's really cool. In 2 weeks from now, on my birthday, my episode will be coming out. So I said all that. I'll be right back. Hang on. One more thing for September 29, 2023. Keeping on with the Behind the Mic episode 3, the Voices of the Educational Podcast Network. So you got to look up that last part. Behind the Mic, Voices of the Educational Podcast Network. And then you'll find the show. Fonz Mendoza from My EdTech Life talks about his journey and how he started as a marketing guy, had a fork in the road moment, and became a math teacher. And like 17 years later, and Fonz, you're not too much ahead of me in teaching years, but I had a fork in the road moment as well. And it's pretty fun to see how those forks get thrown in our road, and we pivot and we figure out how to continue on the learning journey and what are we doing. So it's great to hear her story. Taking it easy, relaxing as we step into things that are the unknown. Pressing record. Him and Chris talk about that as he started recording, and what does that mean? Fonz is up into the 200 episodes. He's like 230 episodes in or something like that, and he records 3 a week. Fonz, it's awesome. I love your format, fantastic, and I am proud to be connected to you. Also glad that I was a guest on your podcast back almost a couple of years ago now. You can go find that if you want. All right, talk to you all later. Have a fabulous day. Carpenter almost signing off. I got one last thing to say, talking about some learning I did with my students as we built our newsletter. So stay tuned for the last thing for today. Hang on. The last thing for September 29, 2023. All right, this is about what happened at school yesterday and my media design 11-12 class. We have been tasked and taken on the production task of building our school newsletter over the past 4 years. Started it off as a design learning opportunity, and it has become less of that in the sense of we know how to do it. We were using Google Slides, doing the desktop publishing through Google Slides in a collaborative manner. All of my students, and I've got a small class, like at max we had yesterday was like 13 or 14 students. So it's a small group, but we would get into the Google Slides. They would take and place the content on the pages in the correct way, font size, layout, things like that. If you ever want to go check out our newsletter, you can go to my school website, avs34.com, go to our school, and then AVS newsletters. You can see the content of our newsletters from the past there. So anyhow, the point is that our district changed and transitioned from Google over the past year to Microsoft Office 365. And I was like, whoa, I don't like that idea. I was a resistor. And so much of a resistor that in the process of trying to transition, I just defaulted back to Google Slides last year. We built our yearbook and our newsletters with Google Slides. Well, come September, we are not able any longer to use our district Google, and we're not allowed to use Google out in the Wild West either. And we will not do so. I'm saying that out here, but we had to use other tools, and we talked about what tools they were. And working with these students over the past number of years, they've learned about Adobe Express and Canva, and PowerPoint, is like Google Slides, but it's not Google Slides. And how can we work in a collaborative space? And yesterday was the coolest thing because they all jumped in and believed in getting the newsletter done yesterday and sharing content in Microsoft Teams. So it's going to be okay. It's going to be fantastic. Proud of my students. I want to say that, and I'm going to share this with them later. All right. We'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoyed this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.